In the heart of a bustling city where skyscrapers touched the clouds and streets buzzed with life, there lived a woman named Maya Thompson. Maya was not just any ordinary person. She held one of the most important jobs in the country. She was the head of Homeland policy, a role that required her to think strategically, make tough decisions, and protect the nation from threats both big and small. Despite her demanding career, Maya led a simple life. She loved reading books on weekends, mentoring young students who looked up to her, and spending quiet evenings at home. Her apartment was modest but filled with warmth, photos of family on the walls, stacks of books neatly arranged, and a cozy chair by the window where she often sat to sip tea. But one fateful evening, everything changed. The calm of her life shattered when two police officers arrived at her doorstep, their flashing lights casting eerie shadows on the walls of her building. They knocked loudly, their boots heavy against her wooden floor as they entered without waiting for an invitation. Maya opened the door, confused and alarmed. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. The taller officer stepped forward, his face stern. "Maya Thompson," he said, holding up a piece of paper. "We have a warrant to search your premises. You're under investigation for involvement in drug trafficking." Maya's eyes widened in disbelief. Drug trafficking? Her mind raced. How could this be happening? She had spent years working tirelessly to serve her country, earning respect and trust along the way. The idea that she could be involved in something so illegal was laughable, or at least it should have been. But as she looked into the cold, unyielding eyes of the officers, she realized this wasn't a joke. This was real. "Listen," she said calmly, trying to reason with them. "You must have made a mistake. I'm the head of Homeland policy. My job is to stop crimes like this, not commit them." The shorter officer smirked, a smug expression crossing his face. "We'll see about that," he said, brushing past her into her apartment. Without giving her a chance to protest further, they began rifling through her belongings. Drawers were pulled open, books were tossed aside, and cushions were flipped over. It felt like an invasion, not just of her space, but of her dignity. As Maya watched helplessly, her heart sank. Something about the way these officers moved told her this wasn't a routine search. Their actions were too rehearsed, too deliberate. And then it hit her. They weren't here to find evidence. They were here to plant it. Sure enough, moments later, the taller officer held up a small bag of white powder. "Found it," he announced, triumphantly, waving it in front of her face. "Looks like we've got our girl." Maya's knees nearly buckled beneath her. She wanted to scream, to fight back, to tell them they were making the biggest mistake of their careers. But deep down, she knew yelling wouldn't help. These men weren't interested in the truth. They had already decided what story they wanted to tell, and she was the villain in it. Handcuffs clicked around her wrists as she was led out of her apartment, humiliated and terrified. Neighbors peeked out of their doors, whispering behind, cupped hands. Cameras flashed as reporters gathered outside, hungry for a sensational headline. By the time Maya reached the police station, news of her arrest had spread like wildfire. Social media erupted with accusations, painting her as a hypocrite who preached policies of integrity while secretly engaging in criminal activity. What Maya didn't know yet was that this wasn't random. These officers weren't rogue cops, acting on impulse. They were part of a larger network, a corrupt system designed to protect powerful criminals. And Maya had unknowingly crossed their path. As head of Homeland policy, she had access to classified information, including details of ongoing investigations into organized crime. Unbeknownst to her, some of those files contained names of people tied to the very syndicate these officers served. When word got out that Maya might dig deeper into certain cases, panic set in. Framing her was their way of silencing her before she could uncover the truth. Sitting alone in a cold, sterile cell, Maya tried to process everything that had happened. Fear gripped her heart, but beneath it burned a spark of determination. She refused to let them win. If they thought framing her would break her, they had underestimated her strength. Little did they know, She was about to turn their plan against them. For now, though, all she could do was wait and plan. Though the night seemed endless, Maya clung to one thought. Justice may be delayed, but it couldn't be denied forever. The days following Maya's arrest felt like an eternity. News outlets plastered her face across headlines, spinning tales of betrayal and deceit. Top Homeland policy official arrested in major drug trafficking scandal, screamed the front page of a popular tabloid. Journalists, eager to sensationalize the story, painted her as a master manipulator, a wolf in sheep's clothing who had fooled everyone around her. Social media buzzed with venomous comments from strangers quick to judge without knowing the full truth. Memes mocking her circulated online, and hashtags calling for her resignation trended nationwide. Maya's once stellar reputation crumbled overnight. Friends stopped answering her calls, colleagues avoided eye contact at work functions, and even family members began questioning whether there was some truth to the allegations. Her mother, usually her biggest supporter, called one evening with trembling hesitation. "Are you sure this is all a misunderstanding?" she asked softly. The doubt in her voice cut deeper than any insult ever could. For the first time in her life, Maya felt truly alone. But amidst the chaos, Maya refused to give up. Locked away in a dimly lit cell, she used her isolation to think clearly and strategize. She knew she couldn't rely solely on external forces to save her. She had to take matters into her own hands. During visiting hours, she scribbled cryptic notes on scraps of paper and passed them discreetly to trusted visitors, notes containing clues about what she suspected was really happening. One name appeared repeatedly: Marcus Thompson, her childhood friend turned tech genius. Marcus wasn't just good with computers, he was extraordinary. Over the years, he'd built a reputation for uncovering digital footprints invisible to most people. From exposing corporate fraud to tracking down cyber criminals, his skills were unmatched. When Maya's message finally reached him, Marcus dropped everything to help. "You're innocent, Maya," he said firmly after reading her note. "And I'll do whatever it takes to prove it." From that moment on, Marcus became Maya's lifeline. Working tirelessly from his basement-turned-command center, he hacked into surveillance systems, retrieved deleted files, and traced suspicious transactions linked to the officers who had arrested Maya. What he uncovered sent chills down his spine. The corruption ran far deeper than either of them had imagined. Through grainy security footage obtained from cameras near Maya's apartment building, Marcus identified moments where the officers could be seen planting evidence. In one clip, the taller officer casually slipped a small bag of white powder under her couch cushion while pretending to search for something else. Another video showed both men exchanging smirks before leaving the scene, confident they'd sealed Maya's fate. But the smoking gun came when Marcus dug into financial records. He discovered irregular deposits made into the bank accounts of the arresting officers over the past few months, amounts too large to explain as legitimate income. Further investigation revealed these funds originated from offshore accounts, tied directly to a notorious criminal syndicate involved in drug trafficking, money laundering, and human exploitation. It seemed clear now. The officers weren't rogue agents acting independently. They were pawns in a larger game orchestrated by powerful criminals desperate to protect their empire. As Marcus compiled the evidence, Maya worked on another front, rebuilding trust among those closest to her. Through coded letters smuggled out during visits, she reached out to a few key allies still willing to listen. Among them was Sarah, a former colleague who had always admired Maya's dedication to justice. Despite initial skepticism, Sarah agreed to meet secretly and review the case against Maya. Together they pored over court documents, police reports, and witness statements, searching for inconsistencies that might weaken the prosecution's argument. Their efforts paid off when they noticed glaring flaws in the timeline presented by the officers. According to their report, Maya's alleged involvement in drug trafficking spanned several months, yet none of the supposed witnesses or accomplices mentioned her until the day of her arrest. Additionally, the so-called evidence found in her apartment lacked proper documentation, raising questions about its authenticity. Armed with this new information, Maya's legal team filed motions challenging the validity of the charges. They argued that the prosecution's case relied entirely on circumstantial evidence planted by corrupt officials. While the fight dragged on, public opinion slowly began to shift. Independent journalists, intrigued by discrepancies in the official narrative, started digging deeper. Some published exposés highlighting contradictions in the police department's claims, casting doubt on their credibility. Meanwhile, inside the prison walls, Maya faced daily challenges. Inmates whispered cruel taunts, calling her names like phony policymaker and drug queen. Others tried to intimidate her, testing how far they could push the woman branded as a criminal mastermind. But Maya stood firm, refusing to let fear consume her. Instead, she befriended a few inmates who shared harrowing stories of being framed by the same officers. One woman, Lisa, recounted how she'd been coerced into confessing to a crime she didn't commit after the officers threatened her children. Another inmate, Jamal, described watching his brother die in custody after refusing to cooperate with their schemes. These conversations strengthened Maya's resolve. She realized her ordeal wasn't just about her. It was part of a pattern, targeting vulnerable individuals unable to defend themselves. Determined to expose the truth, she encouraged her newfound friends to speak out, promising to amplify their voices once she regained her freedom. Together they formed a makeshift support system, sharing tips on surviving the harsh realities of incarceration while dreaming of a future free from injustice. Back outside, Marcus continued piecing together the puzzle. Late nights blurred into early mornings as he traced connections between the officers, the syndicate, and other high-profile cases swept under the rug. Each discovery fueled his determination to bring the entire operation crashing down. He knew the stakes were high, not just for Maya but for countless others whose lives had been ruined by this web of corruption. Finally, after weeks of relentless effort, Marcus uncovered a breakthrough. Buried deep within encrypted files was a recording of a conversation between the officers and a shadowy figure referred to only as the boss. Though the audio quality was poor, snippets of dialogue confirmed what Maya had long suspected. She had been targeted because of her access to classified information threatening to expose the syndicate's activities. The recording also hinted at higher-ups within the police department complicit in covering up the crimes, suggesting the conspiracy extended far beyond the two men who had arrested her. With this damning evidence in hand, Marcus contacted Maya's lawyers, who immediately submitted it to the court. The impact was immediate. Public outrage grew louder as more details emerged, forcing authorities to take action. Internal investigations launched, scrutinizing not only the officers involved but also their superiors and associates. Slowly, but surely, cracks began to form in the foundation of the corrupt system that had ensnared Maya. For Maya, the turning point came during a pivotal court hearing. As her lawyer presented the surveillance footage, financial records, and the secret recording, the judge's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. The prosecution struggled to counter the overwhelming evidence, their arguments crumbling under scrutiny. By the end of the session, bail was granted, allowing Maya temporary release pending further proceedings. Stepping out of the courthouse into the bright sunlight, Maya felt a mix of relief and determination. Though she was no longer behind bars, the battle was far from over. She vowed to use every resource at her disposal to ensure accountability, not just for herself, but for everyone harmed by the same system. With Marcus by her side and a growing army of supporters rallying behind her, Maya prepared to take the fight to the next level. Little did her enemies know, their plan to silence her had backfired spectacularly, and the real storm was just beginning. Freedom tasted sweeter than Maya could have imagined, even if it was only temporary. Stepping out of the courthouse into the crisp morning air, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The handcuffs were gone, but the scars, both visible and invisible, remained. Her face bore the exhaustion of sleepless nights spent strategizing in silence, and her spirit carried the burden of betrayal by those meant to uphold justice. Still, Maya wasn't one to wallow. Every moment of freedom was a chance to fight back, and she intended to make the most of it. With Marcus waiting for her outside the courthouse, they wasted no time getting to work. They retreated to his basement command center, a cluttered yet functional space filled with monitors, wires, and stacks of documents. On one screen, surveillance footage looped endlessly, showing the officers planting evidence in Maya's apartment. On another, financial records highlighted suspicious transactions linking them to the criminal syndicate. As Marcus typed furiously, pulling up new leads and cross-referencing data, Maya leaned over his shoulder, her sharp mind piecing together the puzzle faster than ever before. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Maya said firmly, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "If we expose their connection to the syndicate, not only will it clear my name, but it'll bring down the entire operation." Marcus nodded, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "I've already traced some of these offshore accounts back to shell companies owned by known criminals. But we need more than just numbers. We need names, and we need proof that ties everything together." Maya's eyes narrowed as she thought about the recording they'd uncovered earlier. The chilling conversation between the officers and someone referred to as the boss. That voice belonged to someone powerful, someone who pulled strings, from behind the scenes. If they could identify him, it would be the final nail in the coffin for the corrupt network. "Let me see that audio again," Maya requested, leaning closer to the speakers. She replayed the recording multiple times, focusing on every word, every pause, every inflection. Something about the tone sounded familiar, though she couldn't quite place it. It gnawed at her like an unsolved riddle, urging her to dig deeper. While Marcus continued analyzing digital footprints, Maya turned her attention to rebuilding alliances. She reached out to Sarah, her former colleague, asking for help in navigating bureaucratic channels within her agency. Together, they drafted formal complaints against the officers, attaching all available evidence to ensure their voices couldn't be ignored. At the same time, Maya began reaching out to independent journalists known for their integrity and willingness to challenge authority. She knew traditional media outlets wouldn't touch the story without confirmation, but smaller, investigative reporters might take the risk. One such journalist was Rachel Bennett, a tenacious writer whose exposés had previously exposed corruption in local governments. Maya arranged a secret meeting at a quiet cafe tucked away in a corner of the city. Over cups of coffee, Maya shared her ordeal, the arrest, the planted evidence, the web of deceit surrounding her, and handed Rachel copies of key documents, including the surveillance footage and financial records. Rachel listened intently, her pen scribbling notes as Maya spoke. When Maya finished, Rachel sat back, her expression thoughtful. "This is huge," she said finally. "But you realize what this means, right? If I publish this, it won't just blow up your case. It'll spark a national scandal. Are you ready for that?" Maya met her gaze without hesitation. "I'm not doing this for revenge or attention. I'm doing it because innocent people are suffering while these monsters walk free. If exposing them means putting myself in the spotlight, so be it." Rachel nodded, impressed by Maya's resolve. "All right. Give me a few days to verify everything. If it checks out, I'll write the story of a lifetime." As the pieces fell into place, Maya doubled down on her efforts to dismantle the corrupt system from within. Using her position as head of Homeland Policy, she requested access to internal investigation files related to past misconduct allegations against law enforcement officials. To her surprise, several red flags emerged, cases dismissed too quickly, witnesses intimidated into silence, and whistleblowers mysteriously disappearing. Each file added fuel to the fire burning inside her, reinforcing her belief that this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a systemic problem. During this time, Maya also reconnected with Lisa and Jamal, the inmates she'd befriended during her incarceration. Though separated by prison walls, they stayed in touch through letters smuggled out by trusted visitors. Maya promised them justice, vowing to shine a light on their stories once she cleared her own name. Their courage inspired her to keep pushing forward, even when doubt crept in. Meanwhile, Marcus made a breakthrough. After days of combing through encrypted communications, he identified the boss from the recording. The voice matched that of a high-ranking official within the police department, a man named Deputy Chief Alan Harper. Harper wasn't just any bureaucrat. He was a decorated officer celebrated for his decades of service. His involvement in the syndicate sent shockwaves through Maya's team. How could someone so respected harbor such dark secrets? "This changes everything," Marcus said grimly, staring at the screen displaying Harper's photo. "If we can prove his role in this, it'll take down the whole house of cards," Maya agreed. With renewed determination, they devised a plan to gather irrefutable evidence against Harper. Marcus hacked into his personal devices, uncovering incriminating emails and text messages exchanged with members of the syndicate. Meanwhile, Maya worked on gathering testimonies from others who had fallen victim to the same system. She interviewed former inmates, whistleblowers, and even retired officers brave enough to speak out. The pressure mounted as they prepared to go public. Maya knew the risks involved, not just for herself but for everyone helping her. Corrupt systems didn't crumble quietly. They lashed out violently, targeting anyone threatening their existence. Yet fear no longer controlled her. Every step she took brought her closer to justice, and nothing, not threats, not intimidation, not even death itself, could stop her now. Finally, the day arrived. Rachel's article went live, dominating headlines across the country. Titled, "Exposed: The Dark Underbelly of Law Enforcement." The piece laid bare the conspiracy involving Deputy Chief Harper, the rogue officers, and the syndicate. Accompanying the article were video clips of the surveillance footage, screenshots of financial records, and excerpts from the damning audio recording. Within hours, outrage erupted nationwide. Protesters took to the streets demanding accountability, while politicians scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. Back at DI headquarters, Maya watched the chaos unfold with a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because the truth was finally out there, shining brightly for all to see. Sadness because she knew how many lives had been destroyed along the way. Still, she refused to dwell on despair. Instead, she focused on the future, a future where transparency replaced secrecy, where justice prevailed over corruption, and where no one else would suffer the way she had. As the dust settled, Maya realized this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but she was ready. For the first time in months, she allowed herself a small smile. Justice may have been delayed, but thanks to her relentless pursuit of truth, it was no longer denied. The explosion caused by Rachel's article was deafening. Overnight, Maya Thompson became both a symbol of resilience and a lightning rod for controversy. The exposé sent shockwaves through the nation, igniting conversations about corruption, accountability, and systemic injustice. Politicians who had once praised Deputy Chief Alan Harper as a pillar of integrity now distanced themselves from him, issuing carefully worded statements condemning his alleged actions. Law enforcement agencies scrambled to contain the damage, launching internal investigations while simultaneously attempting to downplay the scope of the scandal. Yet no amount of spin could silence the growing chorus of voices demanding answers. For Maya, the aftermath of the article was a whirlwind of media appearances, interviews, and public speeches. Journalists clamored for her story, eager to capture the perspective of the woman at the center of the storm. While some questioned her motives, accusing her of seeking revenge or fame, most were moved by her unwavering determination to expose the truth. In every interview, Maya remained composed, speaking not just for herself, but for all those silenced by the same corrupt system. "This isn't about me," she would say, her voice steady yet impassioned. "It's about ensuring that justice is served, not just for me, but for everyone who has been wrongfully accused, intimidated, or harmed." Despite the public support, Maya knew the fight wasn't over. Exposing the conspiracy was one thing, holding those responsible accountable was another. With Marcus's help, she continued gathering evidence to build an airtight case against Deputy Chief Harper and his accomplices. They worked tirelessly, combing through decades' worth of records, tracking down witnesses, and piecing together the intricate web of corruption that had festered within the police department. Each new discovery reinforced their resolve, but it also painted a clearer picture of how deeply entrenched the problem was. One breakthrough came when Marcus uncovered a series of encrypted emails exchanged between Harper and members of the criminal syndicate. These messages revealed detailed plans to frame individuals deemed threats to their operations, including Maya. One email stood out in particular, a chilling directive from Harper instructing the officers to target Maya specifically because of her access to classified information. "She knows too much," the message read. "Neutralize her before she digs deeper." Reading those words sent chills down Maya's spine, but it also hardened her resolve. She realized she hadn't simply been framed. She had been marked for destruction. Armed with this damning evidence, Maya approached top officials within her own agency, presenting them with irrefutable proof of Harper's involvement in illegal activities. At first, resistance was fierce. Some feared rocking the boat, worried about the political fallout of implicating such a high-ranking official. Others dismissed her claims outright, accusing her of fabricating evidence to clear her name. But Maya refused to back down. Leveraging her position as head of Homeland Policy, she demanded transparency and accountability, threatening to escalate the matter to federal authorities if necessary. Her persistence paid off when key figures within the agency finally agreed to act, launching a full-scale investigation into Harper and his associates. As the investigation unfolded, cracks began to form in the foundation of the corrupt network. Officers implicated in the scandal were suspended pending further review, while others resigned abruptly, hoping to avoid scrutiny. Financial institutions froze accounts linked to the syndicate, cutting off their funding streams and leaving them vulnerable. Meanwhile, journalists like Rachel Bennett continued digging, uncovering additional layers of corruption that extended far beyond what anyone had initially suspected. What started as a single case of wrongful arrest had snowballed into a nationwide reckoning, forcing society to confront uncomfortable truths about power, privilege, and prejudice. Yet, not everyone welcomed the exposure. Those implicated in the scandal fought back viciously, employing smear campaigns, legal threats, and even violence to protect their interests. Anonymous callers left menacing voicemails on Maya's phone, warning her to drop the case or face consequences. One night, someone vandalized her apartment, spray painting hateful messages across her walls. Despite these attempts to intimidate her, Maya stood firm. She hired private security to ensure her safety and doubled down on her efforts, determined to see justice through to the end. In the midst of the chaos, Maya found solace in unexpected places. Former inmates she had befriended during her incarceration reached out, offering words of encouragement and sharing updates on their own battles for exoneration. Lisa, whose children had been threatened by the rogue officers, wrote to tell Maya that she had finally secured legal representation thanks to the attention generated by the scandal. Jamal, whose brother had died in custody, vowed to honor his memory by continuing to speak out against police brutality. Their stories reminded Maya why she was fighting, not just for herself but for everyone who had suffered under the same oppressive system. Public opinion shifted dramatically as more details emerged. Protesters filled the streets, holding signs that read, "Justice for all," and "No more corruption." Social media buzzed with hashtags calling for reform, amplifying the voices of marginalized communities disproportionately affected by systemic injustice. Even skeptics who had initially doubted Maya's innocence began to question the legitimacy of law enforcement practices. For the first time in years, people started talking openly about issues long swept under the rug: racial profiling, implicit bias, and the misuse of authority. Maya seized the momentum, using her platform to advocate for meaningful change. She called press conferences, delivered speeches, and testified before legislative committees, urging lawmakers to implement reforms aimed at increasing transparency and accountability within law enforcement agencies. Among her proposals were mandatory body cameras for officers, independent oversight committees to investigate misconduct, and comprehensive training programs addressing racial bias and de-escalation tactics. Her advocacy inspired countless others to join the movement, turning what had begun as a personal crusade into a collective push for justice. Behind the scenes, Maya worked closely with Marcus and Sarah to prepare for the upcoming trials. They compiled mountains of evidence, organized witness testimonies, and strategized ways to counter potential defenses raised by the accused. Though daunting, the process gave Maya a sense of purpose. Every late-night meeting, every painstakingly reviewed document, brought her closer to closure, not just for herself, but for everyone impacted by the scandal. Finally, after months of preparation, the day of reckoning arrived. Deputy Chief Alan Harper and several other high-ranking officials stood trial alongside the officers who had framed Maya. The courtroom was packed with spectators, reporters scribbling furiously as prosecutors presented their case. Surveillance footage showing the officers planting evidence played on loop, eliciting gasps from the audience. Financial records linking Harper to the syndicate were displayed on large screens, leaving little room for denial. Witness after witness took the stand, recounting harrowing tales of intimidation, coercion, and cover-ups orchestrated by the defendants. Throughout the trial, Maya sat silently in the front row, her expression unreadable. Inside, however, emotions swirled, a mix of anger, relief, and hope. Anger at the injustice she and so many others had endured, relief that the truth was finally coming to light, and hope that the verdict would mark the beginning of lasting change. When the jury returned its decision, the room fell silent, guilty on all counts. Cheers erupted from supporters, tears streaming down faces as justice prevailed, at least for now. Harper and his accomplices were sentenced to lengthy prison terms, their careers reduced to rubble. It was a victory, albeit bittersweet. Maya knew the road ahead would still be long, requiring vigilance and perseverance to prevent similar scandals from occurring in the future. But for the first time in what felt like forever, Maya allowed herself a moment of peace. Standing outside the courthouse, surrounded by friends, allies, and strangers who had rallied behind her cause, she looked up at the sky. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the city. Justice had been served, but Maya understood. It wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning of a brighter, fairer future, and she was ready to lead the way. The verdict reverberated across the nation like a thunderclap, shaking the foundations of institutions long shielded by secrecy and privilege. Deputy Chief Alan Harper, once celebrated as a paragon of law enforcement integrity, was now a convicted criminal sentenced to decades behind bars. The officers who had framed Maya, men who had worn badges with pride while committing heinous acts, joined him in prison, their careers ending in disgrace. For many, it felt like poetic justice. Yet, for Maya Thompson, the victory was bittersweet. While she had exposed the conspiracy and brought down some of its architects, she understood that dismantling systemic corruption required more than punishing individuals. It demanded fundamental change. In the weeks following the trial, Maya became an icon of resilience and reform. Invitations poured in from universities, community organizations, and policy forums eager to hear her speak. Her story resonated deeply with audiences, particularly marginalized communities who saw themselves reflected in her struggle. She traveled tirelessly, delivering speeches that combined personal reflection with calls to action. Justice isn't just about punishing wrongdoers, she often said, her voice firm yet compassionate. It's about creating systems where wrongdoing cannot thrive. That starts with accountability, transparency, and trust. But Maya didn't stop at words. Leveraging her position as head of Homeland Policy, she spearheaded sweeping reforms aimed at addressing the root causes of corruption within law enforcement. One of her first initiatives focused on implementing mandatory body cameras for all officers nationwide. Studies had shown that such measures significantly reduced incidents of misconduct, providing objective records of interactions between police and citizens. Though resistance came from unions and departments reluctant to embrace oversight, Maya stood her ground, arguing that accountability benefited everyone, including officers committed to serving honorably. Another cornerstone of her campaign was the establishment of independent oversight committees tasked with investigating allegations of misconduct. Comprised of civilians, legal experts, and retired officers, these panels operated free from departmental influence, ensuring impartial reviews of cases. Maya also pushed for comprehensive training programs designed to address implicit bias, cultural sensitivity, and de-escalation tactics. By equipping officers with tools to navigate complex social dynamics, she hoped to foster mutual respect between law enforcement and the communities they served. Her efforts sparked heated debates across the country. Critics accused her of undermining authority, claiming her proposals would hamstring police departments already stretched thin. Some even labeled her a traitor to her profession, suggesting her reforms prioritized criminals over victims. But Maya remained undeterred. At every turn, she countered criticism with facts, citing examples of cities where similar measures had led to improved relations between police and citizens. "Change is never easy," she told a skeptical audience during one town hall meeting. "But clinging to broken systems only perpetuates harm. We owe it to ourselves and to future generations to do better." While advocating for structural reforms, Maya continued supporting individuals directly impacted by the same injustices she had faced. She partnered with advocacy groups to provide legal aid to wrongfully incarcerated individuals seeking exoneration. Through fundraisers and awareness campaigns, she raised money to support families torn apart by corrupt practices. Her work extended beyond high-profile cases. She championed everyday people whose voices might otherwise go unheard. Single mothers evicted due to discriminatory housing policies, teenagers unfairly targeted by stop-and-frisk laws, and immigrants exploited by predatory enforcement practices. One such individual was Jamal, the former inmate whose brother had died in custody under suspicious circumstances. Inspired by Maya's courage, Jamal decided to pursue a degree in criminal justice, determined to become a voice for change from within the system. When he graduated 2 years later, Maya attended his ceremony, beaming with pride as she watched him accept his diploma. "You're living proof that no matter how dark things seem, there's always hope," she told him afterward, her eyes glistening with tears. Moments like these reminded her why she fought so hard, not for accolades or recognition, but for moments of redemption and renewal. As momentum grew, Maya expanded her focus internationally, collaborating with global organizations tackling issues of corruption and human rights abuses. She traveled to countries grappling with similar challenges, sharing insights gained from her experience and learning from others' successes and failures. These exchanges broadened her perspective, reinforcing her belief that justice transcended borders. Whether speaking at the United Nations or visiting grassroots movements in remote villages, Maya carried the same message. True progress required collective effort, unwavering commitment, and unyielding faith in humanity's capacity for good. Yet, despite her achievements, Maya faced constant reminders of the scars left behind. Threats persisted, though less frequent now, delivered through anonymous letters or late-night phone calls. Security details accompanied her everywhere, a necessary precaution but also a stark reminder of the dangers inherent in challenging powerful systems. Friends worried about the toll it took on her mental health, urging her to take breaks and prioritize self-care. But Maya refused to slow down. "Rest can wait," she'd say with a wry smile. "There's still too much work to do." Amidst the whirlwind of activism and advocacy, Maya found solace in small moments of normalcy. She reconnected with old hobbies, spending quiet evenings reading novels or tending to a tiny garden she started on her apartment balcony. Family gatherings grew more frequent, laughter replacing the tension that had once strained relationships. Even Lisa, the woman whose children had been threatened by the rogue officers, became a close friend. Together, they planned weekend outings, finding joy in shared experiences despite the pain they had endured. Public perception of Maya evolved alongside her journey. Once vilified as a hypocrite and criminal mastermind, she was now celebrated as a hero, a symbol of perseverance and hope. Documentaries chronicled her battle against corruption. Textbooks included her story as a case study in leadership and morality, and award ceremonies honored her contributions to justice reform. Yet Maya shied away from accolades, redirecting attention to the broader movement. "This isn't about me," she reiterated whenever praised. "It's about all of us working together to create a fairer world." By the 5th anniversary of her arrest, tangible progress had been made. Police departments across the country adopted body cameras and oversight committees, leading to measurable reductions in misconduct complaints. Legislation addressing racial profiling and excessive force gained traction in Congress, buoyed by bipartisan support. Communities began rebuilding trust with law enforcement, fostering partnerships rooted in mutual respect rather than fear. Though challenges remained, resistance from entrenched interests, lingering biases, and occasional setbacks, the trajectory pointed toward meaningful transformation. Standing before a crowd gathered to commemorate the milestone, Maya reflected on how far she'd come. From being wrongfully accused and vilified to becoming a catalyst for change, her journey had transformed not only her life, but countless others. As she gazed out at the sea of faces, activists, allies, survivors, and dreamers, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Justice may have been delayed, but it was no longer denied. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly present new obstacles, Maya knew she wasn't alone. Together they would continue pushing forward, guided by the unshakable belief that a brighter, fairer future was possible. For Maya Thompson, the fight for justice wasn't just a chapter in her life, it was her life's purpose. And as long as inequality persisted, she vowed to stand at the forefront, wielding truth and courage as weapons against oppression. Years passed, and Maya Thompson's name became synonymous with resilience, justice, and reform. What had started as a personal battle against corruption evolved into a lifelong mission to create a fairer society. Her journey, from being wrongfully accused to becoming a beacon of hope, inspired millions around the world. Yet, for Maya, the work was never truly finished. Every victory, no matter how significant, revealed new challenges that demanded attention. The road to justice, she realized, was not a straight path, but a winding climb requiring constant vigilance. By the time Maya reached her late 40s, her legacy extended far beyond courtroom victories or policy reforms. She had become a mentor, guiding young activists and aspiring policymakers eager to follow in her footsteps. Many of them came from marginalized communities, individuals who had grown up witnessing the same injustices Maya fought tirelessly to dismantle. Through workshops, seminars, and one-on-one sessions, she taught them the importance of perseverance, strategy, and empathy. Change doesn't happen overnight, she often reminded them. It takes patience, courage, and an unshakable belief in what's right. One of her most dedicated protégés was Jamal, the former inmate whose brother's death had ignited his passion for justice. Under Maya's guidance, Jamal founded a nonprofit organization focused on advocating for prisoners' rights and preventing wrongful convictions. His efforts gained national recognition, earning him invitations to speak at prestigious conferences and collaborate with lawmakers. When asked about his success, Jamal always credited Maya. "She didn't just inspire me," he said during one interview. "She showed me that even someone like me, a kid from the projects with nothing, could make a difference." That's the power of her example. Maya also reconnected with Lisa, the mother whose children had been threatened by the rogue officers. Over time, their friendship deepened, evolving into a partnership aimed at supporting families affected by systemic injustice. Together, they launched a foundation providing resources, legal aid, counseling, educational scholarships to those rebuilding their lives after encounters with corrupt systems. The foundation quickly grew, attracting donations and volunteers from across the country. For Lisa, it was a way to honor the strength she'd discovered through adversity. For Maya, it was proof that collaboration could transform pain into purpose. Despite her achievements, Maya remained humble, refusing to let accolades define her. Awards lined the shelves of her modest apartment, but she rarely spoke about them. Instead, she focused on the stories of those still fighting for justice: the single father battling eviction due to discriminatory housing policies, the teenager arrested without cause simply because of the color of his skin, the immigrant detained indefinitely without access to legal representation. These were the faces that fueled her determination, reminding her why the fight mattered. Her advocacy expanded globally, addressing issues of inequality and human rights abuses beyond national borders. She traveled extensively, meeting with grassroots movements, government officials, and international organizations committed to creating equitable societies. In South Africa, she partnered with activists combating police brutality in townships. In Brazil, she worked with lawyers defending indigenous land rights. In India, she collaborated with women's groups advocating for safer communities. Each experience enriched her understanding of justice, teaching her that solutions varied depending on cultural contexts but shared universal principles: accountability, transparency, and compassion. Yet Maya's global impact did not shield her from criticism. Some accused her of spreading herself too thin, arguing that focusing on domestic issues would yield greater results. Others dismissed her efforts as idealistic, claiming systemic change was impossible. But Maya welcomed dissenting opinions, viewing them as opportunities for growth rather than obstacles. "If we're afraid to challenge each other, we'll never grow," she told a skeptic during a heated debate. "Progress isn't linear. It's messy, uncomfortable, and sometimes painful. But if we keep pushing forward, we'll get there." As she entered her 50s, Maya began reflecting on her own mortality. The scars of her ordeal, both physical and emotional, remained, serving as reminders of the cost of challenging powerful systems. Late nights spent strategizing took a toll on her health, forcing her to prioritize rest more often. Friends urged her to step back, suggesting she had done enough, but Maya couldn't imagine stepping away entirely. "I'm not done yet," she said with a smile during a quiet moment with Sarah, her longtime ally. "There's still so much to do." To ensure her vision outlasted her lifetime, Maya turned her focus toward institutionalizing change. She established a scholarship fund for students pursuing careers in public service, ensuring future generations would carry the torch. She authored books detailing her experiences, offering practical advice for navigating bureaucracies and advocating for reform. And she worked closely with legislators to enshrine protections against corruption into law, safeguarding hard-fought gains for years to come. Her final major project was perhaps her most ambitious, a documentary series chronicling the stories of individuals impacted by systemic injustice. Filmed over several years, the series highlighted diverse perspectives, from victims of police misconduct to whistleblowers exposing corporate greed. Maya served as both narrator and producer, weaving together narratives that underscored the interconnectedness of struggles worldwide. When the series premiered, it received critical acclaim, sparking renewed conversations about equity and accountability. In her later years, Maya found peace in simplicity. She returned to hobbies she had neglected during her busiest days: gardening, painting, and writing poetry. Her balcony garden flourished, bursting with vibrant flowers and herbs. Family gatherings became cherished traditions, filled with laughter and love. Though threats occasionally resurfaced, they no longer consumed her thoughts. She had built a life rooted in purpose, surrounded by people who valued her for who she was, not just what she achieved. When Maya passed away peacefully in her sleep, at the age of 62, tributes poured in from every corner of the globe. Politicians praised her contributions to justice reform. Activists honored her unwavering commitment to equality. Ordinary citizens shared memories of how her story had inspired them to stand up for what's right. A state funeral celebrated her life, attended by thousands who came to pay their respects. As her casket was carried through the streets, chants of justice for all echoed in the air, a fitting tribute to a woman who had devoted her life to that very cause. But Maya's true legacy lived on in the countless lives she touched. Children grew up learning about her bravery in schools. Communities implemented reforms inspired by her advocacy. Movements continued thriving, fueled by the principles she championed. Even decades after her passing, her name remained a rallying cry for anyone seeking fairness in an unjust world. For Maya Thompson, justice wasn't just an abstract concept. It was a living, breathing force capable of transforming lives. Her journey proved that one person, armed with truth and determination, could spark monumental change. And though she was gone, her spirit endured, guiding others to pick up the torch and continue the fight. After all, As she had often said, justice isn't something you achieve, it's something you nurture. And nurture it she did, leaving behind a world forever changed by her courage.